What's up, people? My name is Anthony, and welcome back to the What's on Your Mind podcast. Joined by a very, very special guest today. I'll allow him to introduce himself, and then we'll go from there.
My name is Anthony Brinson as well. I just happen to be the senior of the two. And what's up?
Nothing much, good sir. How you feeling?
Good, good. Long time coming.
Yeah, we was just talking behind the scenes before the recording that it took so long to get to this point. It took, I think you said 6 months to finally get this recording down.
A little longer, but who's counting?
Hey, I really appreciate you sitting down and having this conversation with me and allowing me to give you this interview. It means a lot. To segue right into the first thing I wanted to talk about, I really cherish our relationship and have you in my life for the eternity of my life. And it's been really impactful, as I've told you many, many times before. Being a father and having the upbringing you've had, from your perspective, what is the importance of having a father figure in a child's life? And what would you say is the difference between having one versus not having one?
Wow, you're just going to jump right into the deep end. No precursors or anything.
That's how we get down around here.
Well, it's a great question. And I had in mind how I wanted to start the podcast off. And, I was intending on just ripping the Band-Aid off and getting the controversial part out the way. Mm-hmm. So let me just do that and say, most parents are always proud of their kids. No matter what hiccups they make in life, bad decisions that we feel, they're mostly proud. But for you to find something that you've carved out your niche in, that you're following up with your college education with, and just doing this podcast, man, I could not be more proud of you. And I have been anxiously awaiting this interview. And it kind of segues into the question that you had, which is the importance of having two parents, not just one or the other, because I often say that I don't see how kids succeed in life without both. You know what I mean? Without both parents being in their life. Mm-hmm. Dads are important for dad things. Obviously, moms are important for mom things. But when you subtract one of those, then there's a deficit that the kids encounter growing up that just never can be replaced. And so, obviously, I feel like it's important. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that I've been able to be one of those fathers that's a dad also. And there's a difference.
That's a very important difference.
You know what I mean? And so, we had a great support system. I tell you and your other sibling all the time that, we made it. We started off early, your mom and I, my wife. We started out early, but we had each other's back. Through whatever we went through, it was always us going through it. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way, in my opinion, that we made it.
So, definitely understandable.
Enough of the mushy stuff.
Well, I want to start off by saying I really appreciate the kind words you said in the beginning. It really means a lot to hear that, especially coming from you and being someone who I've modeled a good portion of my life around. It really means a lot to hear that you're proud of me and to hear that you're proud of the platform I'm trying to build. And you mentioned something else between you and mom with starting off so young and starting off so early and building what y'all had to build. And I've mentioned to you before as well that when I want to have my own family of my own, I would like a daughter first. I would like to keep that heartwarming part of me that is able to be really sweet, but also be a really good parent. And I've seen you with, obviously, your own daughter, my older sister, and other young girls who you've been able to be a mentor or parent over, like my little cousins, for example. As someone who's raised a daughter first and started so young, how would you say you handle that as a young male, being my age that you were, and moving forward with being a young parent and also raising a young girl as you were also growing yourself?
Well, it's the importance of being a man. First of all, being rooted. Obviously, we're a spiritual family. So being
Correct.
Rooted in God and understanding what the Bible says about a man's role. And so, but when you raise a family, and in particular, when you have a young daughter first, it puts a man in protection mode. Now I'm not just living for me. What I'm doing is protecting my girlfriend, who's soon to be my wife, and my child's mother. All three of those, protecting those. And now, in addition to protecting those three, now I have a young daughter as well. So it brings out the natural protectionism in a man. And a lot of people say it softens a man, but I really say it gives him more focus. You know what I mean? If I was, a thug in the street, if I was a athlete, whatever it was, that now has to take a back seat to my primary role, which is man, father, husband, boyfriend, caretaker, and so on. And so, yeah, when you have a daughter, first, that's why it's so important for young men to be around positive role model men. And we'll get into, the book Critical Mass and, why a mentor is as important as a mother, things of that nature. I'm sure we'll get into it at some point in the podcast, but it's an important point, and I'm sure we'll get back to it.
We definitely will. And as your son, to continue that point, what type of advice would you give me for the distant future when trying to build towards a family, trying to create that foundation first before going into fatherhood?
Well, this, I believe, is a completely different conversation. So when I said about the protectionism and the male's role and all that, father-son relationship is obviously more nuanced. Again, I'll start by saying I don't see how any young man can make it without a dad being in his life. Because what happens is young men without a father raise themselves. And the mother can only do so much trying to raise a young man. And so those are all obvious points. But when we bring it down to the level of, let's just say you and I, for example, I always look at the examples of when I was there, the times that I was there. I can remember looking up in the stands when you do those performances and you have a basketball game. And when you look up and you don't see dad there, oh, it's an impact.
Really?
It's the difference in scoring 40 in a basketball game and getting kicked out because you got two technicals. I've seen that with my own eyes. I've been in that own situation. And so just to put it back on us, when I think about your honor award ceremonies and talking to your teachers about just how brilliant Anthony III is and, the expectations that they have. And then somebody will always sneak in, oh, I see where he gets it from. Oh, I see where he gets that charm from. Oh, I see where he gets the good looks from. More importantly, though, and seriously, is that I see that he has somebody in his life to guide him through some of the pitfalls that young men go through. And so I feel like there's nothing more important on this earth than a father being there for their dad. And I can reflect on not having that. We'll just leave that at that for now.
Definitely understandable. And the fact that you mentioned that and still made it a priority to be in your son's, and first your daughter's, but your son's life as well, meant a lot to me growing up, seeing how that's not common. Meeting people and meeting friends, girls even, who would say that I wasn't the best in my relationship because I didn't have that male figure to show me how a man is supposed to treat me. That opened my eyes more even than the guys that said it, because they'd just be like, oh, I don't need him. They won't really show that side that they actually needed them. And you mentioned that connection of having both parents in your life, not just dad, because even one parent is hard to do on your own. And it's hard to do with both of y'all. So having that connection, having mom in my life as well, really meant a lot. And you mentioned previously the book that you wrote, Critical Mass. And before I get into ask you about that, I had a story about one of the first times I noticed that I wanted to do something in writing. And it was in my 10th grade English class her name was Miss Gibson. And we all had a writing assignment. We all had the same writing assignment we were writing about. And she had everybody speak out loud about it. And I was surprisingly one of the last people to go, because usually she would go in alphabetical order, but she decided to do things in the reverse and go from last name or last letter to most recent letter, first letter. And when I got to mine, I was a bit nervous, and I'm thinking like, wow, I've heard some incredible stories. I don't know if it's really going to be that good. And in the middle of reading what I had wrote, somebody started crying. And I looked over, and it was somebody I was pretty close with. Her name was Michaela. And I asked her, or I was wondering, the teacher asked her, she asked, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And she said that the words that I was speaking were things that I have been through, and that it hit so hard when I was saying it that it was pretty powerful that somebody else could understand. And in my 10th grade mind, I was so confused because I never had brought someone to that emotion with just things that I wrote. And the teacher spoke to me after class and after school when she saw me again and said that you have a gift. You have something special there, and you should always continue to write. And you have a very powerful way with words. And especially, it was one thing to see a peer brought to tears, but to have someone who's an English teacher, who's more experienced in that field, tell me and reassure me that this is something that I could take as a career really meant a lot to me. And as we've mentioned and alluded to, that you wrote a book before. And with writing that book, what was the process in getting the idea and putting the idea on paper and then actually getting it out there? And what does finally getting that book out there and having it published mean to you as a writer and as a person?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Well, first of all, that moment that you talked about realizing the impact that words have, was kind of a come to Jesus moment for me as well, so to speak. Just to give you a real brief background, is that I was a young guy. I was in maybe second or third grade, and we had a essay. They called it it was a particular kind of essay, and we had to write about it. Long story short, I wound up writing about the time Michael Jordan and I played one-on-one, and it was tall tale type of essay, so I could go as far as I wanted to with that, and wound up writing all the things that I would possibly do to Michael Jordan in my second grade year of school, and it took second place. But again, I had a teacher like you come to me and say, hey, I know this is, kind of, fictional, but focus on your craft because you have the ability to affect people with your writing. And so if you fast forward to that, a little known story about my book, since you brought it up, Critical Mass, Why a Mentor is More Important as a Mother. Topic is obviously meant to be controversial, obviously, a mother's role in the world is well scripted out and nobody can compare to that. But a little known fact about the book is that you had a pretty big impact on it.
Really?
So one of my favorite parts of the book is a picture about halfway through the book in which I am standing there in a suit and I've got about 15 young men around me, and they are probably no older than 10 years old. And I am standing in the middle, and you can just see the beacon of light shining from my face and the smile on my face because I'm in my element when I'm mentoring and trying to pass on what I call in the book some head nods, the things you kind of hit your head on and rub it and go, ooh, that hurt. Uh-huh. When I'm able to share that with young kids, young men especially, then I'm in my element. A mentor of mine, Mike Murdoch, says that if you just look at a fish and observe him just regularly, it's not that overwhelming. But when you put him in your element, when you put him in his element, he gets in the water and you begin to see the genius of that fish, you realize the importance of doing what you're designed to do. Mm-hmm. And so that picture with those young men was your young gentleman's class. Mm-hmm. And it's so rewarding to look back and see those young men now, most of them in college, mm-hmm. Driving, working jobs, taking care of families. I mean, it's rewarding. So that's the rewarding part of giving back. My nickname is Tony Mentor. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the more important roles I believe that I will embark on in this journey of life. It's making sure I reach back and tell somebody, hey, if you only do this in life, your life will be rewarded that much more. If you only pay your ticket when you're driving and not ignore it, your life will be increased exponentially on the good side. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's important, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about it later on. But wanted you to know that you played a good role in that, because the Young Gentlemen's Club was kind of the genesis of me getting the book together. I wanted to have the interaction with the youth. I wanted that picture. And so once that kind of came together, everything else kind of rolled from that. And then one last thing you mentioned about finishing it up and making sure that I stuck to it and all that. And it's because I had someone on me. One of your uncles, the late, great Eric Nelson, served as a mentor for me. And he used to just call me. And, when I initially started writing the book, he would ask me, hey, man, where you at on it? How much progress have you made? And when do you expect to be finished? And it got to the point where he would call me 2-3 times a day, and I was annoyed by it. Because I'm like, man, I'm at the same point it was when you asked me yesterday. And he wouldn't stop. He would call me. And then toward the end of the book, I was stressing out about how I would bring it to its culmination, to its end. And he said, Aunt, you done did it. It's finished. Go and put that thing out, man. And so, again, I speak from both parts when I say being a mentor and having a mentor. There's nothing more empowering and positive for a person to have that in their life. I generally defend my thesis about the part of being more important than a mother is that everybody now that's living at one point either has a mother or had a mother. Charles Manson had a mother. Jeffrey Dahmer had a mother. And those are extreme examples, but them having a mother did not dissuade them from committing some of the most heinous crimes in human history. Hitler had a mother. You know what I mean? And I know they wanted the best for their child. But you take those same people and you take those same young men who get locked up 3, 4, 5 times at the rate of any other man, black man in particular, and you enter somebody in their lives who say, you know what? You don't have nobody to go to the basketball game with you or the football game. I'll go with you. You know what I mean? Or, hey, I saw you skipping the other day and I'm not having it. I don't know where your mom and dad at, but you get your butt in that school. I had people like that, and I've seen people like that, and I understand the difference that makes. So it's uber important.
And even though I was unfamiliar with my role in the book, I still remember that picture to this day. I'm pretty sure we were having some type of event going on, and I still know some of those young men to this day, like building friendships with them and staying a part of the Young Gentlemen's Club throughout my entire school career. It was important learning the things like learning how to tie a tie from my dad and from the club as well, or just making sure I had someone to keep in my mind to open the door for young ladies. It was something that my mom and you first instilled in me, but having that reassurance that, hey, they're not just saying that just because they're your parents. This is something that you should make a part of your life, and still carrying those things today. It's almost shocking to see how important a mentor is. And when you first heard that title, why a mentor is as important as a mother, it grabs your attention.
It's meant to be, jarring.
And when you
but it's true. I stand by it.
And when you would first hear something like that, you would be like, I wonder what he means by that. And then as you explain it, it's a very good argument to say the least. And you have a remarkable way with words and saying things like culmination or just dropping little gems and being able to have that type of knowledge. And we've joked about before, there have been moments where I've literally seen you read the dictionary, and I've heard like artists or writers say some type of thing like that, but just actually seeing it and seeing you obtain that knowledge is really important to see that it's possible and you can actually remember those things. What does that mean to you as a person to just have that type of knowledge and be able to obtain it? And as a writer, when putting that to things like your own writing or your own notes or your own book?
Well, expanding and studying the lexicon no doubt helped me to advance my prodigious pericope. In other words, helped me finish my book. Look it up, guys. But it's just studying, man. The minute you come into this world until the minute you leave, you are learning something every day. And you never stop learning until you leave this world. And so me, always being intrigued by, words. I remember I was at a job one time and one of the managers threw out the word advantageous. Now, years later, it seems like a really regular word. Okay, yeah, you're using something to your advantage. But I was just so enthralled by it. And she saw the light that went off. And so every other day she would come up with a word. She said, the next time I saw her, she said, hey, they are making up a new schedule and they're changing the hours. And I don't want to be surreptitious about this, but you should check that out. Blew my mind. And so I would just look up words to combat her, good words. And then we got into this exchange to where, people were looking at us like, okay, you guys are showing out. But it just goes to show that when you study, when you make yourself, set aside certain time to learn extra, that expands so much more that you're able to do. I always tell you, when I drop one of those words, I stopped giving you the definition to them. Because one of my favorite sayings is that your generation, the generation that you're in right now, has a huge, humongous advantage over what we have. You guys are able to find out in a millisecond what took us weeks to find out. We would have to, I don't even know if none of your audience going to be able to relate to having to have encyclopedias that we had to rent because they were so expensive, $6,000 a set for books, to be able to study, the origins of the world, God, the Bible, humankind. You guys are able to type it in as fast as your little thumbs can move and it pops up instantly. So that's an advantage. So when I drop a word, when I say pericope, or what was the word I gave you the other day, whatever it was, you can type it in without even me knowing and come back and be like, oh, I know what that means. That's a huge advantage. So I would implore you and your generation to use the advantage of technology that you all have today. And there shouldn't be anything that you come across that you can't, come up with some type of at least vague definition of what it is based on what you're able to find.
And one of the most important English lessons I learned were things like context clues. Like when somebody's having a conversation and they drop a word you may not know, they prepared us to have things like context clues and know about them because you won't always have that access if it's in the moment of a test. But when you have the ability to look up words and know what they mean so fast, it becomes a lot to still remember those words and actually use them properly. So it's impressive to not only know those words, but also put them in practice and use them in correct statements as well. And something else that I've seen that you love more, almost as more than being a wordsmith, is things that work your mind. And one of the most important and impactful things I've seen from that is the game of chess, and just being able to use the knowledge of not only what you want to do and what type of moves you want to make, but trying to predict the moves of someone else or another computer if you're practicing on your own. When did you start playing the game of chess, and why has it been such a thing that stuck to you throughout the years?
Oh, man, you're talking about my passion now, but you mentioned something that is even more of a passion to me than chess. And you didn't know what you were saying when you just said this, but they used to call me wordsmith back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, and that was from my rapping abilities.
Really?
Yeah, and so wordsmith is a special thing to me. I'm not just a wordsmith, but that used to be the name I go by. So this podcast is certainly going to be probably broken up into a few different segments.
Really?
Maybe I'll drop a few verses for you, but let's get to the game of chess. It is probably one of the most important things I do on a daily. And the reason for that is that when you hear people describe the game of chess, they say, well, it allows you to think 3 or 4 moves ahead, or, it's a thinking man's game and all that. But more importantly and more nuancedly is that it is the game of life. It's about planning. It's about coming together. It's about sacrifice. There's so many concepts to the game that I'll give you a story of how I started playing. So, real quickly, it was a 75-degree, partly sunny, perfect basketball day. We were out in the street playing basketball. It was about 30 people. I mean, this was one of those days where everybody's mother said that they can go out and play. I think we were a little older actually, but I mean, we were just all gathered, shooting some hoops, and we were in an intense game, and there were people on the sideline waiting. And this is all young black men. So this is what blew my mind about this, is that one person pulled out a chessboard, right? He said, I got next, y'all. But while I'm waiting on this sideline, I'm going to pull out this chessboard. And another guy was right there and was like, oh, bro, you don't want none of this in chess? Everybody that was out there that day stopped playing basketball and went over to that chessboard and was like, oh, I got next. And I'm standing there going, black people don't play chess? Like, what are y'all doing? I knew nothing about the game at that time. But to see every one of those guys out there, I mean, it was almost to a person. Everybody stopped and was like, yeah, you can tell that it was a community thing because we were on a particular side of, the east side. And, this is something that they had done before, obviously. And so when they stopped and garnered their attention over to the chessboard, and it was actually lively games, I knew nothing about the game at the time, but I knew I had to learn it. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend, a very special friend of mine, name was Ed Brown. We call him Ed Brown, Edmund Brown. Mm-hmm. He would eventually teach the game to me, a couple of others that I can mention, but we started playing, and he's went on to be with the Lord now. God bless him and his family. But very instrumental in just showing me the game. And then he had this competitive edge on him that he would always say, man, you would never beat me in this game. You would never be able to beat me in chess. And that, unfortunately, in my life, that's the times I excel the most. When you tell me something like I'm going to never be able to do something, I was immersed in it. And so I studied the game. I would play him and watch him go from laughing at me and, just clowning my every move. And then you would see a shift. A couple weeks later, you'd be like, oh, that's a good move, man. And then you see him pause for a minute, and then those pauses got longer. And then one time he knocked the chessboard over like, oh, man, you got lucky. And from that point on, I just kind of soared, studied the game, tried to teach you all the game. I remember going to your sister's chess tournament and watching her for the first time, not knowing that she could be good at the game, to making it far in the tournament just based on, what I was teaching her and what she was learning for herself. I don't know if she followed up and continued to study the game, but I can't, this podcast will go on forever. But one of my best stories, obviously, about chess is when I started teaching you the game.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
And you started studying and you got into it. But you were a needy kid. You and your sister always, I nicknamed y'all, can I get and let me have? Because you always wanted something. So I started to tie all those little wants into the progress that I wanted to see you put in that chessboard. So I would say, listen, if you're able to make the first 5 moves on this board, I'll let you stay out a little longer outside, or, you can go to that program you wanted to. In this particular chess game, this is when you start getting a little better. And you wanted a laptop. And I had a laptop, I may have had more than one. I wasn't using this one. But you were so intrigued by this laptop. I mean, you really wanted this laptop. So I tied that in. I said, you know what? Son, if you ever beat me in a game of chess, the instant that you beat me, this laptop is yours. And you used that as motivation. I saw you getting better. and we were playing one time, and I'm looking at the board, and I remember having that same look that Edmund had when I was beating him. And I watched you make a couple moves, and I'm thinking in my head, damn, that was a good move. And I'll never forget, it was your move. And I started out, maybe playing around, not giving you my best, but as the game progressed, this was a really good game. And I remember you being one move away from checkmate. And I didn't let you get there. Now, again, I was playing in the beginning like, oh, let's see what this guy got. By the time we got to that point, you were one move away from checkmate. You had a queen on my king's file, and you had to come down all the way to the king. You had it protected by the knight. Anybody who knows chess knows that you can't finish a game with one piece by itself. There's always got to be help. And so you had the perfect setup. You had your queen on the right rank, and I told you, study the board. And you looked at the board for about 5 extra minutes, and man, you made this move, and it was the wrong move, and you didn't get the checkmate and went on to lose the game. And I said, you know what, son, let's go back to this moment. I want to show you what you had. And when I showed you the setup, and I think you saw it as I was showing it, I remember a tear coming down your eye, man, and it was funny, not funny, but that was one of them times where I'm like, man, it just shows you that whatever you put your mind to, if you serious about it, you can excel at a lot of things, man. But I'm glad you didn't make that move that one day, because, it would have been one of them. I'd have been one of them Jackson 5 dads where I'd have been like, no, we playing chess today. We playing chess today. We ain't doing nothing else. So it's a good moment for me.
It's not a lot of things from years ago that I can remember saying, like, I remember that exact moment. Literally, if you can ask him how my hands are moving now, it frustrates me again to this day. This could have been like 5, 7, 10 years ago.
It would have been life-changing for you.
Makes me frustrated to this day. I still never got that specific computer. I have one now, but I remember the exact computer. If you still got it, very frustrating loss. But it showed me the potential that I could actually do this. Even as frustrated as I was, the reason why I was so frustrated is because I was this close to beating somebody who plays chess every single day and somebody who taught me a game. And you said something very important about the game of chess. You said that not one piece can do it on its own. You always need help. And absolutely. That just now stuck a light bulb in my head and blew my mind, because that can be talked about so many other things other than chess. And to tie it into myself, 100%. I just recently, as my audience and I started college a couple years ago, and I'm going on my second semester of my second year. And it's been a really hard time. And I've been honest with my audience, honest with you and mom, that it's been very difficult. And I can turn around and see my friends who maybe aren't in school or taking less classes or who don't owe money to a college institution, and they have cars, they have good paying jobs, they're working towards an apartment. And I've been honest and came with you and asked, like, Dad, how do I get rid of this feeling of being behind? College always makes me feel that things have to get rushed, certain situations you have to go to if you want to succeed. And just to ask you again for myself and for the audience listening, what type of advice would you give to someone who's struggling in school but wants to persevere and get that degree that they're aiming for?
Wow. It's another good question with a lot to unpack in that. Let me just start by saying your mom and I are blessed as parents. You guys do things that frustrate us. We feel like you guys don't listen to us at times. And this is just not coming from us. Everybody who's been around us, one of the first things they acknowledge is that, man, you guys did something right because your kids are so smart. Your sister got a full ride, all expense paid education to the University of Michigan. You got a full ride, all expense paid educational opportunity at Michigan State. Now, one of the remarkable things about that is, if you name all the schools in Michigan, those are probably two of the best. And so to tie it into your question, what advice would I give for kids going to college? I would say, first of all, that you are the creme de la creme. You at the top of the top. You know what I mean? You're at a school that when you look on anybody's list, It's going to be at the top. They got some of the top programs. They got some of the top advisors and PhD level, doctorate level teachers. You know, it's so when you think about, oh, this is hard. I used to tell your sisters this all the time. It's because you're attending the best that Michigan has to offer. So that's what they thought about you. In the same way, I look at you and say, listen, you are doing something that 90% of the people you encounter throughout your life can't say that they've done, which is attended one of the best schools in the state that you were living in and brought up in, excelling, done made it through, your first year, now into your second year, got a job, got a podcast, experiencing social life now. So it's the best that you can it's the best situation that you can be in right now. And with that, it's going to be a lot of head knots. Those head knots that I talked about, because it's not easy. So one of the first points I would make is that, a lot of times when we embark on journeys to better ourselves, we have a certain expectation of what that's going to be. And when that expectation has been broken or maybe not lived up to according to what you thought it was, we get dejected. I went through it. Your mom's brother, when he eventually went back to school, he would come to me and say, hey man, you got to get it. At some point, you're going to have to go back. And I used to be like, no, you know what? I did my high school. I got a job. Not looking forward to going back to school. But he was right. Old Dr. Mays, I call him, was right when he said that you're going back at some point. So why wait? You know what I mean? Go and get it out the way. And it was that, other type of mentorship that pushed me. And so I know you need a push. So number one, if you're struggling in college like that, get around somebody that's going to help you. Not only in terms of, studying for different things, but that's going to give you a little kita. I don't know if you heard of what a kita is. KITA.
No, I haven't.
Everybody needs a kita. It's a kick in the ass. And, it's just, I hate to put it like that, but that's one of them things that helped me, get to the next levels because, not everything is going to be peaches and cream, man. And you need somebody to hold your foot to the fire and say, listen, I'm not downing you. I'm not going to, because, me and mom, first thing we said was, listen, bro, your health mentally is more important for us than you obtaining a degree. And that's big words to say because a lot of parents be like, hey, if we was in China, you'd be not welcome back to the family if you don't get that degree. But for us, your mental health comes first. And so we took the stance that, hey, we're going to wait to the last minute till we have to say this. But we eventually got to the point where we told you like, hey, this ain't working out, man. There's always community college. You know what I mean? Come on home. But you stuck in it. You're still sticking with it. You're persevering. And it just takes a village, man. That's one of the oldest sayings, in the English, literature or whatever, is that it takes a village to raise a child. Me and mom, we both went to college, well educated, but we can't give you enough on our own. You need aunties, you need uncles, you need friends, peers, you need positive instructors. I mean, maybe we'll get into this later on, but I can give you an example of when I had an instructor who stayed on me but would build me up with encouragement, and when I had an instructor who just didn't give a care. And it's like night and day, the path that I took from being with this one and being on that one. So you need positive influences. Listen, y'all, if y'all listen to this podcast, call in, tweet me, twerk me, whatever y'all got going on in social media. You need positive influences, and those influences can be each other. We, as young black men, you guys are hard on each other, man. Y'all talk about each other and all that, but it's good to have a group of peers that you can kick it with, that you can play the game with. But at that same time, hey, you finished that report? You know what I mean? How you doing on your grades? What what are you planning on doing after this year, after this semester? How's it going? So you need positive influences. You need somebody who's going to hold your feet to the fire and bring that keto that I talked about. And then you just need a support system. You need to be able to come to your people and say, hey, I'm not doing okay. You know what I mean? Because those are the vulnerable moments. Those are times when you be like, you step back as a dad and go, you know what? Okay, maybe I don't need to be drill sergeant dad at this point. You know what I mean? Maybe I need to be loving, nurturing, and caring dad to just let him know that, hey, man, I understand your plight. And as a dad, I'm never going to tell you to give up on anything. I'm always going to encourage you to finish, stick in there. But at the same time, what's more important to me is for you to feel that you have a safe spot about anything we want to talk about. That's one of the topics that I didn't write many topics down that I wanted to bring up, but one of those topics was the fact that you and me, we made a pact that we could always talk about anything and that nothing was off the table. And it's so funny, when we first made that pact, I didn't realize that you were going to take it so literal. And so some of the things that you started talking about right away, I'm like, whoa. Like, wait a minute, brother. I didn't mean that, in a literal sense that we could talk about anything. But I appreciated that because you kicked off the Genesis, again, the exegesis. Look it up. The critical examination of what we were talking about, which is, let's me and you agree that we can talk about anything. And since then, man, it's been some real conversations had between us. So, again, I appreciate that, my brother.
I appreciate you opening that door to even have those type of conversations, because one of the most impactful moments in my life were some of the moments where I didn't know who to go to or who to talk to, especially in my early high school days of not opening up about a lot of things. And usually kids always say parents don't understand, but one of the big things that I feel is important between parents and kids is seeing signs of certain things. And you and mom came to me and y'all asked a very important question of, how are we going to know what's going on if you never come to us? And I stood, and I wasn't obviously in the best mental state, but I thought about that, and I thought, like, that's the most realistic and honest question I could get. And the only thing I can offer them is just letting them in and trusting them in moments to say that I'm not okay, or I'm not okay in this moment. And once you made that pact, like, hey, from this moment forward, we talk about anything, I took it as literal as I could take it, because there's no way to sugarcoat the full truth. Sure. And especially with emotions, not being able to get through those things on your own, like you said, you need that support system.
Well, I don't know if you remember what you started talking about, but it was girls. it was along the lines of that's for another podcast. But
Indeed,
it was some deep conversations there. But all good.
Yeah, as someone who's obviously handled that situation and got it with 2 kids and made that foundation, the only person I could go to about that. But like you said, it was
for another time.
For another time, indeed. And you've been alluding to a very important part of the podcast I want to get to, and it's definitely religion. You've said Genesis a lot of times, and you've mentioned that we are a God-fearing family. And the first question that I want to get into that is, where did your belief come from? Who instilled that in you to make sure that you kept that a part of your life? And even when growing up and having your own mindset, what allowed you to keep that faith and to keep the religion that you serve?
Well, first and foremost, we are children of God. And so I believe that it's an innate ability to connect with God from the time that we were born. Because again, we were born, everybody came from God. We are all children of God, first and foremost. But then you go through your family, I don't want to say traditions, but your family upbringing, so to speak. And having people who knew God, who knew about Jesus, and wasn't afraid, like the Bible says, be not ashamed of the gospel. And so always had those kind of people in my life from very, very early on. I had a stepsister, Dominique, who was, into church, and, she would say how important it was for her family and mom to to be in church, and then it started with, kind of going to church with them and mom, participating in that, and then, later on in life, just being around a spiritual grandmother, who would, she was tough as nails, but it would always come back to the Bible. Both of my grandmothers, mother's side and father's side, again, had their ways about themselves, but always spiritually grounded and making sure we knew, about God. And then as growing up and being cultivated, coming into my own, making sure that never left me. You know what I mean? It's been pointed out more than a few times that with the way I speak at engagements, and, I'm kind of toned down right now, but, anybody who's heard me speak at any event will go, listen, man, your gift is for the Lord. You know what I mean? You'll eventually be pastoring at some church. You'll be giving some kind of sermon. Obviously, I've went on to do that, ordained minister now, and
definitely was going to mention that.
have gotten a couple sermons under my belt. But growing up, there were times and people that were in my life that made sure that they wasn't just getting God for themselves. They made sure I had it as well. I mentioned Dr. Mays, my wife's brother. He would hold Bible studies when your mom and I was dating. We called him Pastor Mays at the time. He would hold Bible studies just in the house by itself. Not the biggest house, rough neighborhood, but he was so committed, so committed to these Bible studies that he would hold them weekly. And if I wanted to date and see your mother, I had to come to them Bible studies. One of my sisters now, your mother's sister, gave me my first Bible.
Really?
And those are the kind of things that you remember spiritually. And I still got it to this day. It's probably 30 years old. She gave me my first Bible. I would go to the Bible studies. And initially, hey, I was just going to see my girl. You know what I mean? If that meant, listen to some people pray and hoot and holler and sweat, I was down for it. You know what I mean? But through that cultivation, through that mentorship, through that guidance, you start getting it for yourself. And then it got to a point where, I was there and then I was there and now I'm here every week. And now you start calling me to pray. You know what I mean? We're going to have Anthony pray for the service. And man, I just remember being so nervous and praying in front of my eventual wife's people and her mother sitting right there. And I remember going from being nervous to expecting to pray. I would look forward when he called on me. And they talk about this, when we get together a lot. It just put something in me that you have to, the gift God gave to you, you got to give it back to him. Mm-hmm. And so I recognize that with yourself. Your mother has told you this. A lot of people, outside of the family has told you that gift that you have, that gift of writing, the gift of speaking, the gift of influence, that's God's gift. And you will eventually give that back to him in some form of preaching the gospel. It's my belief.
Hey, speaking into existence, good sir. And one of the things you mentioned I was going to get into is that you are indeed a minister. And that moment, I still have the photos in my phone. And usually I try and delete pictures because they take up a lot of space. But I've always kept the moment that you were ordained, the word you used, that you were ordained a minister. What did that day mean to you as a man and as someone who helped raise the family in Christ and finally getting to that moment of becoming a minister? What did that mean to you? And were you ready in the moment that it was brought up to you that this would be a part of your life now?
The word that comes to mind is evolution. And a lot of times that word doesn't mix with, the Christian community. But evolution is when we take the ideas that we have about ourselves, we mix them into everyday life, but then we realize that there's something bigger out there, something more. And I guess people come to that realization at different times in their life. But for me, it was knowing that there was something more for me to do out there. And again, I've always been around it. I've spoken at different engagements, and I've always been in church. I've been in church since I was, 7, 8 years old, as far back as I can remember. And I used to just sit and listen. And then when it was my opportunity to speak about something, I would immerse myself in the subject. I mean, spent hours studying one particular, topic, Genesis, the beginning. What does that mean when it says, in the beginning, God created the earth? Well, what did he create? How were we formed? He spoke into nothing and all creation grew. You know what I mean? That was fascinating to me. And so fast forwarding to the part when I was a minister or ordained, I just felt like evolution, like I've evolved to the person that now needs to make sure that I'm concerned about other people's salvation, including my own. One of the things that stuck out to me, and this was right around the time, this is how some people say, this is how I knew this was God. You know what I mean? This is one of my, this how I knew that was God moments. The week before, maybe even a few days before that ordination, I was in a mall and I passed this gentleman, and you can just tell, some people you can walk by and there's an aura, a sense of, you can feel something. And I believe I haven't seen this gentleman before, but he didn't know me. He didn't know who I was. And I just walked past him and I'm like, hey, brother, how you doing? And he's like, hey, he gave me that look like, why are you speaking to me? I don't know you. I walked past him like, man, maybe he don't remember seeing my face or whatever. I walked past him. And about 10 steps down, he called out to me and was like, hey, brother. And I'm like, hey, how you doing, brother? He like, man, I got to tell you something. He said, one of the first things he said is, my name is Pastor Armstead, and I do not do this if it is not from God. He said, but God just told me to tell you that the walk that you're about to go on is an important one, but that you're ready. And he just started speaking into my life. We call it in the Christian community, prophesying into my life, about something that God had given him that he didn't know who I was, but that God spoke to him. And he said, brother, if this was not God, trust me, I don't play like this. I wouldn't be saying it. He said, but the journey you're about to embark on now is an important one, but that you're ready. And he said this, and this was so important to me because it allowed me to kind of go forth and be my own type of, person in the Lord. He said, you're going to reach people by being who you are. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be the pastor. You know what I mean? He said you in one of those age groups where you old enough to get it and understand, but you young enough to still relate to the people. So he said your vernacular, the way that you come off, the style that you use. He said, make sure you keep doing that. Be you. Talk to the people in a normal, regular conversation. You don't have to beat them over the head with the Bible. You want them to come to you first and be open to have a conversation. And you're going to do that by being you. And man, I was just stunned. I stood there for the next 5 or 10 minutes, dumbfounded, going, God, I know you speak to people. Mm-hmm. I've seen you speak to me in certain situations about other people, but I was confused as to how this man knew at what point I was in my journey, so specifically speaking to the things that I was about to embark on. And so we still have a relationship to this day, but it let me know that, hey, this is God, and whatever you do, I'm not perfect. Your sister bought me a shirt that says, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little bit. That's just me. You know what I mean? And so I'm not shying away from who I am, but I do know that we should look to be better individuals, better men, better women, better family members, but we are going to fall short. The Bible said all fall short of the glory of God. And so that word all just means everybody. We are not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but we got to keep looking to what the Psalms say in the book, to the hills, to where my help come from, because we need help. all of our help comes from the Lord. And so that's important.
And that story, I'm not even sure if you've told me that before. You probably have, and I just forgot it. But that story perfectly segues into the next few things I wanted to talk to you about religion. Because one of the most impactful moments of my life, and we keep using the word impactful, but it really still is stuck in my head to this day. There was a young lady, this was also around 10th grade in high school. It was a young lady who was going through some suicidal thoughts. And she was someone who usually would, always open up about her emotions and say like, yeah, I'm not okay. But there was 1 week of school to where she wasn't coming to school, and she wouldn't contact myself. She wouldn't contact the mutual friends we had. And we were wondering like, hey, what's wrong with this young lady and what's going on? And we end up hearing from a mutual friend who she did come in contact with that she said she was going to take her own life. And there was, in that moment when I heard that, it really scared me because I didn't know what to do. I've told you and people who know me closely that one of the worst things and one of the hardest things to cope with is not knowing what to do. And myself and the mutual friend who told me this information, we were thinking like, okay, we have to go to somebody, we have to go to a social worker to tell this information to. And as we were walking, it was in the gym, and we had to walk through the gym to get to our office. I asked her to stop, and I said, you know what? I'm going to pray. I'm just going to pray about this situation. And I spoke to God. I asked God to give us the knowledge on what to do moving forward and to also protect her and keep her life here to this world. And long story short, we ended up speaking to the social worker, and she said that the young lady was okay, that she came in contact with her and the family, and the young lady is still here to this day, and she did not take her own life. So to have that moment in my life, that if I can only pick one, that's my thing that's going to always allow me to know that God is real. And again, I can say one of the best things, if not the best thing you and Mom did for me and my sister, but especially me, is introducing us to God and knowing that no matter what, that we can get through things through Christ. And I literally have a scripture tatted on me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, Philippians 4:13.
Hey.
And knowing that there's a purpose, a plan and a purpose that God has made for my life, that is the strength that I take along with the support that I have to get me through things such as college. And one of the next questions that I had is that I've heard throughout my life before that it's not easy being a Christian. And I personally can agree with that, with the things I've been through, even in my young life as well. And with going through certain things, I've had to remember that no matter what, God will always make a way. But even though I have that understanding, not many others I come in contact with do. I've heard this, and I've even been asked this before by some of my peers, but, well, if God is real, why would he allow certain things to happen in the world? Or if God is real, why do you still go through depression? Not to mention, when meeting others who may believe in something different, they have honestly asked me, why do you believe in Christ? Why do you believe in what you believe in?
That's good.
As someone who is more wise than I am, been through much more than I have, and someone who also does their own research about other religions and may have potentially came in contact with individuals who may believe something differently, how do you maintain your faith as a Christian? And what would you say to someone, young or old, who may have questions or doubts about Christ and our beliefs?
Well, the first thing, and that is so much in there, but it's obviously the most important topic that we're probably going to talk about, is that get God for yourself. Experience Christ for yourself. There is nothing like it. And what I mean by that is, I can tell you all I want about Christ, what he's done for me, where he brought me from, where he's taken me to, the different miracles that I had. Remind me to mention the microwave miracle recently.
We definitely have.
But I can wax poetic about all the things that I've experienced from God. But the first thing I would say is that personal relationship. And it's the easiest thing in the world. It just comes from asking God to, hey, I know I'm your child. Enter into my heart, enter into my life, and show me you. It's very simple. You ain't got to be, holier than thou. You don't even, and this is the controversial part, you don't even have to be saved to do that. You can be a hoodlum on the street. Matter of fact, there's a verse in the Bible, I believe it's in Matthew, where Jesus himself talks about if the well needed a hospital, then there wouldn't be hospitals. In other words, he said, I came for the sick, not the healed already. I came for those people who need help. You know what I mean? And so that's the derivative of Christ. It's coming because we needed him, because we were a broken people. You know, we couldn't save ourselves. You know, I think it talks about God looking down and being displeased at what we were doing. So we needed a Savior. And we still do. We need him every day. And it just reminds us of how human we are. But it just starts with putting your own side away. I always say, you know, ego getting in the way is so much that we do. Because just because you haven't believed about something, or just because you haven't seen, oh, that must mean it don't exist. Put your ego aside. Put everything you think you know. You know, I'm always fascinated by the study that says human beings use less than like 2% of their brain throughout their whole life. So you mean tell me in your little bitty peonic mind that you done made a thesis that just because you didn't see it, it don't exist? You know, sometimes you got to get out your own way. And God allows us to do that. He gives us free will. As Christians, as Christ followers, we believe that God gives us free will to ultimately make our own decisions, but that he wants us to know him personally. And you can't do that without having a personal relationship. So I would say, hey, start off by, you know, setting some of the biases that you have aside, you know, and just asking them one day, you know, God, show me you into my life. I promise you he would do it. And as for other religions, again, I'm very strong in my beliefs. I'm also persuasive. In other words, what I read, I want to share to others. I want to tell you why God has been so good. But I never force things, because if I try and force my way on you, you're instantly going to put up that wall. If I'm talking to a Muslim, or if I'm talking to Jehovah Witness, or, you know, Church of Latter-day Saints about something, listen, there's only so much that I'm going to go back and forth about. Because I'm starting to realize that if you've got something convinced in your head, the more and more we talk about it, the more and more you're going to be convinced of that. But if I can get you to just let down that wall for a minute and say, read this for yourself, you know, and tell me what you get about it. Oh, okay. If Jesus wasn't real and I'm talking to a Muslim, talk to any higher level Muslim and ask them about Jesus. They're going to speak glowly of him. You know, they're going to say that this is a virtuous man who never lied. No other religion will be bold enough to call Christ a liar. It's because he's true. And so we follow him because he's truth. And when I talk to other people about other religions, hey, you know, I tell them about Christ, and then I leave Christ to do the rest. You know, there's a saying that says, hey, if we do the possible, God will do the impossible.
Wow. It's a perfect way to end what you were saying. And you mentioned the thing about Muslims as well. And it's very funny you mentioned that, because that has been a real life conversation I've had. I met someone at school who was a Muslim, and I asked them, well, just like they asked me, why do you believe in the things that you do? And then once they explained that, I asked them, well, how do you view Jesus Christ? And it was the most positive things that you could ever say about Jesus Christ. And it was very similar to what we believe in. And so when he finally finished, I asked him, well, what's the major difference in how you view Jesus Christ versus how I do? And he said, well, we only view Jesus as a prophet. And I was like, okay, well, that's a huge difference between us. But other than that, it's eye-opening to hear that the things that they can say about Jesus Christ, like you said, they can be negative, and you won't ever call him a liar. And even in saying that they only view him as a prophet, he expressed that the things he said were truth, or things that they also follow. So it's very eye-opening to see that even in different religions and different paths that people may believe in, and different paths people may take, Jesus Christ is always somewhere in that, and it's maybe sometimes even the center of certain beliefs.
You know, it's important. It's an important point that you make, because if you study, and I've got, you know, friends who are of the Muslim faith, and we sit down and have regular conversations, and one of the things that you realize is that, they're figures in the Bible and in their Quran, their book that they worship, that they'll bring up. And they're always tied to Jesus. If they talk about Moses, if they talk about Abraham, if they talk about the children of Israel, Jesus spoke about all that. Ask them what their feelings about Abraham is as a Muslim, and they'll go on, speaking glowingly about Abraham. But Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am.
Wow.
You know what I mean? That means, hey, before, anybody did, he said, there's no God but me. You know what I mean? And so, again, they will not dare to say Jesus was a liar. But if you look at some of the things that Jesus said, he specifically addressed it, but in a way that was loving, not so much, what's the word? Combative. You know what I mean? Because, again, if I'm trying to persuade you into believing what I believe, the minute that it becomes too contentious is the minute you're going to walk away. And so he would just give, Jesus realized that we wasn't going to get a lot of what he was saying. So he would use what he called parables. He would say things like, instead of telling you about being reckless with money, he would say, there was this one young lady who had some money and she went out to spend it and she spent it wrong, but then she came back and realized that she needed more money. And when she asked for more money, a person told her no. And that's how she learned her lesson. He was compassionate, but he was absolute. And you'll find that when you compare any other religion, that Christianity and Jesus is absolute about what happened.
Really. And we've had the opportunity to talk about things such as religion, the more controversial things, and we may segue back to those things in general, but I want to go back to the relationship of a father and son and just having the type of relationship to always be able to laugh at certain moments. And one of the funniest moments, ironically, all these years later, being on a platform of mine, is when you were on a platform and you had the opportunity to speak on something as he shakes his head soon as I segue and transition into it. There's a moment where he was on the platform and he called me and my mom up to say some words of encouragement. And, I didn't get the memo of how things are supposed to be handled, and I had a joke, but I'll let him tell it from his perspective first.
Oh my God. You know what? I mentioned earlier that the Young Gentlemen's Club and the picture was transformative and all that. This is another transformative part of my life right here. I almost forgot, but I'm glad you mentioned it. So the irony of us sitting here and me being a guest on your podcast is that I had the opportunity to be on national radio. I mean, if you're from the Detroit area or Michigan in general, you know that this is probably the number one radio station, certainly in the Metro Detroit area. And I was a guest on there. I was talking about my book, Critical Mass, and just other topics, my clothing line, Sweater Face, Level 10 Beard Game, and, just some of the things I've been able to accomplish being a mentor. And, we just had a lot of topics that come up, and people began to call in and comment. Well, very special person called in, my wife, of course, and she had our son on the phone with us. And, we were keeping it lighthearted. And I'm like, son, show him some of your intelligence. Tell him some of the things you know about what's going on in the world. Let's talk about the Pistons, for example. Woo woo, and everybody in the background going crazy like, that's right, Detroit love, Pistons. And I said, son, tell him about your basketball team, your favorite team. And he immediately went into, well, sure not the Pistons. I mean, how old were you then?
I do not remember.
You was young, man. And one of the first things you said, well, it sure ain't the Pistons because they trash. And you kind of heard a silence go over the room a little bit. And we like, okay, but yeah, all right, so let's change topics. And then he went on to say, well, we're sitting here talking to your dad about his book and some of the things he's accomplished and, how it's important to be a mentor. And I know you as a son, having a dad who's written a book about mentorship and, who nickname is Tony Mentor, I know you've gotten the benefits from all that. Tell us about that. You remember what your answer was?
I remember.
You started to say, well, I mean, I guess he's okay. He's not that great of a dad, but, he's okay. And I'm like, all right, cut. So, coming up in weather, it's going to be sunny and cloudy at the same time. Like, I was dumbfounded, but there's a saying that kids say the darndest things. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of children, is that they don't have the filter that we learn to have throughout life. And so you was speaking what wasn't the truth, but I mean, it was too deep of a topic to even, get your feelings on. And you was telling how you felt at the moment. Mm-hmm. I was a little perturbed at the time, but again, that's just one of the moments that, it's art imitating life. Mm-hmm. As we look back, and I'm on the radio and you calling in, and now I'm sitting here on your podcast talking about it.
It's crazy how things always come full circle, and that's why I allowed him to have his perspective about that. The only difference between my version and his version is that I'm 90% sure I said psych no when I first said that, because I'm pretty sure I didn't stand strong on that.
Listen, but it's probably somewhere still out there in the radio verse. I'm gonna have to track that down, because you was hard on the brother.
But he called. My mom called in and we got through the phone line, and as the story goes, he asked the questions about the Detroit teams, and while I won't ever bash any other platform or any other team on my show, the opinion still is similar to what I had said all those years ago, but more so about my dad. Pretty sure I said psych nah, but even in that joke, it shows that, like he said, that some serious moments that, even if it's very serious or we're expecting one response, you never know what the response you give, especially from a young kid. And it's always funny to look back on that and laugh that there's another moment that I still remember all these years later, and I think the guy had asked more so a mentor more than dad, and I was like, he kind of a good mentor, but okay, either way,
I'll let you have your verse. I'm glad you weren't obsequious at the time.
The irony of that specific word is we were just talking about that word, and while I also ironically don't remember what it means, we did just talk about that word, and it's somewhere in my notes.
Look it up.
Definitely will look back in my notes. Matter of fact, live moment during the recording, I'll look right in the notes actually and see what it means, because I definitely, hopefully, wrote it down to make sure that I remember the word. And
so be glad that I didn't tell you that moment was a floxinosinylipilification.
Really, there's a huge story behind that word that we can get into as well. But if you were to say the word again to make sure that it's one that I've wrote down before, and if my notes are correct, excessively attentive, or just keeping attention.
It's a suck up, basically. So a person that's just trying to say the right thing at the right time, and that's definitely not what you did.
And it's so funny. You mentioned the word that you just said, very long word. What's the story behind how do you know that word and why it's something that stuck with you, another thing that stuck with you all this time?
Again, they used to call me wordsmith. So one of the things that as you go through life, you find your identity, and then certain things will start to stick to you. Really? You know what I mean? People know you as just a kind young man. You're going to go out your way to help people. And so that's your identity. You know what I mean? And so me just being fascinated by words, that's one of those words that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's the longest word in the dictionary. Mm-hmm. And it means so little. It's like the ultimate conundrum of words. It's a complete... it's a complete opposite of what it sounds like. There's a word that I was looking for in there that I couldn't think of. And sometimes you can't force it. But the word floxinosinylipilification, one of the interesting things, and we're going to go live on here, and I'm going to run the risk of making me look bad. But one of the interesting things is that not only can I say it, know the meaning of it, but I can spell it.
Okay.
So I'm going to have a crack at it here. Floxinosinylipilification. FLOCCINIHILIFAFICATION. That's it.
And I'll make sure we can, if you want to fact check that later, but I'm pretty sure with the look on his face and seeing the pauses, I'm gonna trust him in that was the right spelling and pronunciation of that word.
What's more intriguing about that word is the definition. And I want you guys to look it up, so I won't give the definition. But let's just say, for as big of a word that is, it means very little.
And that's so crazy how the English dictionary works, because you would hear words like that and just you'll drop those type of gems and then you'll tell me to look it up and it means the most simplest thing.
Absolutely.
Like with the word we mentioned earlier, you just said it's just pretty much a suck up or someone who's really attentive only for a certain purpose. And it opens your mind to many other words that you can look up. If you gave me a different word and it had a word in there that I couldn't read, and it was probably this word that you mentioned, but I couldn't understand it, and I looked that word up, and in that definition, it was another definition.
It was about 3 of them.
Yes.
It just led to another. Man, I forget what word that was.
One of them was, I think, serval, Servile.
That was the last of the definitions of the initial word I gave you.
And it opened a big rabbit hole of where you could go and how many words you can learn and just the knowledge you can evolve. And another thing, we've talked about chess, looking up words, and one of the things you mentioned is being a wordsmith. You said that was a nickname that you had back in the day when you used to rap a bit, and off recording you said that you might want to drop a freestyle or a couple bars. So if you're still up for it, I'll put you on the spot, see if you can still give that freestyle that you wanted to.
Listen, I don't freestyle because my style ain't for free. But, at some point in the podcast, I definitely drop a few lines for you, for sure.
Got you. And another thing that you've mentioned that you love and that you also got me to love is basketball. And we'll have many, many, many debates about who's better, who's greater, who should get this. And
this is the topic that you almost got a whooping on the most, man. I'm going to keep it real. Like, you had a lot of latitude growing up, man. But when you start talking about number 8/24 over there in that purple and gold, there's just a lot of whoopings that's been on the verge from this, man. But I'll let you finish.
And one of the, actually not really the best story, but one of the stories I've told him as someone who's seen things such as debates and allowing to get your thoughts out there. One of the main things that ruined my love for debating, was basketball, and more so talking about the late great Kobe Bryant, rest his soul. But in my personal opinion, I'll put it out there, and then I guess this will be a live debate that we'll have as well. But in my personal opinion, while Kobe Bryant is the greatest Laker of all time, greatest Los Angeles Laker of all time, he's the third greatest player in my personal opinion of all time. And my other two, with number 2 being LeBron James, number 1 being Michael Jordan. Even though these are opinions, there could be facts to support this opinion that I have. And if you would like to, again, there are many people who have made me not like debating no more over this one specific player. The person I'm talking to, low-key being one of them, even though he's never been too aggressive in that opinion. It's something that we've almost gotten to agree on as LeBron James has gotten better in his career, but I'll let him have his moment in talking about this type of thing.
This is one that is near and dear to my heart, man, because I remember I was talking about your generation and you guys having an advantage over, technology and learning. Mm-hmm. Well, here's why I believe I have an advantage, right? Because I have the perspective of being able to see every player that we're talking about play the game of basketball. Mm-hmm. So I watched Michael Jordan coming up, right? And I'm a bad boy. I'm a Detroit Piston through and through. I bleed red and blue. So I'm a Piston. So I did not like Michael Jordan coming up. But when you watch him, it was undisputed who was the greatest player at that time. He would do things that, again, me not rooting for him, he would make a play and I'd go, man, that's just a good play. You down 6 or up 6, I would place everything I own on the fact that Jordan gonna win that game. Mm-hmm. Down 6 or up 6. And so when it spilled over, me being a young guy and watching Michael Jordan, so the next great player, in my opinion, to come after Michael Jordan was Kobe Bryant. And I would watch him, and I was a little older. I was playing ball myself by that time. And I would just watch what he had. And one of the things that people point to about Kobe was that Mamba mentality that he would go on to embody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But he didn't get that from himself. He didn't start calling himself the Mamba. people would always say, man, he got the mentality of the most poisonous snake in the world. Like, if he got a chance to win the game on one shot, there's no other person that I would rather see have that ball in their hand than Kobe Bryant. Mm-hmm. And so I got a chance to see his whole career. Now, I watched Jordan, his whole career. I was young, but I remember when he dropped 60-something on Bird. I remember when he, single-handedly went from getting beat up and not respected by the Pistons to destroying the Pistons. You know what I mean? And then I watched Kobe Bryant's career. And in my opinion, he had something that even Michael Jordan didn't have, which is a skill set that matched his mentality. Jordan was just dogged, and he can do a lot of things on the court. But when you look at Kobe Bryant play, the grace in which he played, there's a famous story that he would go train hours and hours at a time with the great Akeem Olajuwon. Just think about that. A shooting guard going to train with one of the best centers in the world because he realized how good his footwork was. And then he would come back and you see him on the low post, posting players up, turn around, jump shot, head fake, all those different kind of things. And then my biggest, the reason why I say he was the next after Jordan was because in those key moments, when you seen him with the ball, now, like I said about Jordan, down 6 or up 6, Mike J winning that game. But down 2, Kobe Bryant is taking that shot and he's winning that game. Guaranteed. And then you get to LeBron. Now, surprisingly, my opinion on LeBron is very quickly evolving. I used to say, hey, he behind Kobe and that's it. But you can make a case if you're a numbers guy that he might be even better than I can't say it. I'm not literally gonna get
we almost got there. We almost got it.
I can't verbalize the words that I'm about to say, but you know what I'm about to say. You can make a case that he's the
I think you meant greatest of all time. Maybe.
So again, now I've had the advantage of watching Jordan, then watching Kobe, then watching LeBron. And LeBron is like a mesh, like a mashup between them two, and throw another couple greats in there. Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, the way he's a floor general, and doing things that nobody has done. But my biggest argument against LeBron was the eye test. I don't care how many numbers you throw out there, and he's going to have them all by the time he finishes. I watched him. I've seen him come down to where early in his career, the criticism was he's scared of the moment. And I used to give him the benefit of the doubt and be like, let me watch this guy. And in so many big moments, he would pass that ball and they would lose a game that they were supposed to win. And then you would hear the media going, King James, with a moniker like King James, you're not passing that ball for the last shot. I don't care if you got Larry Bird and Peja Stojakovic shooting on your team. You're not passing that ball to nobody. You King James. And so that was I couldn't get past that initially because he would defer and prefer to pass the ball in those big key moments. But then you realize that he came into the league doing that. He was a good dunker, a good scorer and all that. But if you watch his high school games at St. Vincent, St. Mary's and all that, he said one of his passes of playing the game was assist and getting those ball, getting the ball to his teammates. And so if you take that aspect away, I would always say he don't pass that eye test because, again, Michael Jordan, when he down, I seen Jordan foul himself one time going to the hole, and the referee called it. I seen that man rip Karl Malone's arm off to steal the ball, and they didn't call it, and go on and light Byron Russell up for 2 game winners and 2 championships. I seen Kobe dribble through 5 people with the clock winding down from 10-1, fade out of bounds, and hit a 3 to win the game in the finals, or in the playoffs, I should say. And so I don't have those moments that I can point to from LeBron, but the totality of what he's accomplished, again, your generation, I can see why y'all call him the GOAT.
Really,
leave it at that.
Even though I don't consider him the GOAT, I consider him under Michael Jordan. But even with my opinion, at the end of his career, maybe even at the end of this season, there's going to be too much with him on his side to say like he's not the greatest of all time.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering.
And ironically, there have been many stats I've told my dad to mess with him, be like, LeBron actually, does this, and that. And he mentions the eye test with not having those moments of clutchness, that I should say. And ironically enough, someone could look this up. We'll definitely look this up after the recording, but he's statistically the most clutch player of all time.
Just let me know that stats ain't everything. That's the most jaded stat that I've ever heard in my life, because I didn't see these players play. But go ahead, I'll let you finish.
And just even in the moments where he didn't shoot, he was always making the best play available. This back and forth is a perfect example of showing that perspective always is going to be someone else's reality, but it may not be the reality. No matter what, everybody's going to have their own biases and always have their own viewpoints in seeing who's their favorite player, who's their GOAT, who's their greatest of all time. There's really not a correct answer, because I've heard someone have Wilt Chamberlain as nearly the greatest of all time.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the most unstoppable shot that'll ever be introduced to the game. Just think about it. Name all the things that players have done. I mean, the crossover with Tim Hardaway starting it to Allen Iverson evolving on it. How unstoppable that was. But if you put Gary Payton on him early in his career, he would stop it. The fadeaway. Kim Olajuwon on the blocks. But if you, put Shaq, a heavier guy on him, once Shaq got into his own, he learned how to stop it. The step back that they're doing now, you know what I mean? That's close. But the sky hook is something that he himself brought to the game, and it's never been duplicated, and it's never been stopped. Show me footage of a sky hook getting blocked. And not only that, it was going in. I mean, it ain't like he was just throwing it up to the rim. This guy done invented a move that was unstoppable. Mm-hmm. How many players can you say that about?
I personally can't think of none at the moment. And the craziest part, to tie it right back into LeBron James, we talk about that player who has this unstoppable shot, and we talk about LeBron, sometimes passing up on the moment, not having that maybe killer instinct some others have said. And he's about to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most points of all time. And that even shocks me as somebody who tries to defend LeBron James. I would not have guessed, one, that he was the most clutch player of all time. Dude, that just sounds ludicrous, even on my end. But also knowing that he's about to have the most points of all time and still plans on keep going. Wants to play with his son. Wants to continue playing for championships. May even catch him at Kareem at the end of this season. It just really shows what LeBron James has done in this amount of time, with him being in year 20, if I'm not mistaken.
One of the remarkable things about LeBron James, I heard somewhere that he commits to spend $1 million per year solely dedicated to taking care of his body.
Really?
And it's probably up. That amount has probably been up since I heard that, because that was a while ago. But they said he spent $1 million a year keeping his body in tip-top shape. And I thought about it, and I was watching him the other day. The man just turned, 38 years old? Mm-hmm. I believe right now, and this is one of the biggest criticisms of LeBron James' career, right, is that he never entered a dunk contest. I believe in year 20, at 38 years old, if he was to enter the dunk contest, he would win it or be dang on close to it. Which just says, again, I mean, I ain't no hater. You know what I mean? I see what I see. I'm looking at the guy score 45 with a triple-double the other night. 3 games in a row, 45, 46 at almost 40 years old, and he's still playing at a high level. I don't think he got 5 years left in him, but 2 or 3 more years, 1 more championship, greatest scorer to ever play the game. Not only that, one of the most dazzling stats I heard is that he passed Magic Johnson on the assists record.
That is phenomenal.
So
that is shocking.
So you're a better passer per se than Magic Johnson. You're a better scorer than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You got more MVPs than Kobe Bryant. I mean, bro, I don't even like saying that stuff. I'm done. I'm done.
What can you say about him? And one of the things you mentioned is that even in this season, he's playing at a high level. And even with him playing at a high level, he's probably not even a top 10 MVP candidate right now. Who would you say? Very insane. The basketball is being played right now. who would you say is your leading candidate? If you're forced to pick one, who would you say is your leading candidate for MVP at this current moment? And who are the runner-ups or honorable mentions or other names you could throw out there?
I'm gonna go a little bit off the path here. There's about 3 guys that you would think has got it, but this guy is playing so well, and it reminds me of one of our other basketball debates. Early on, we were talking about who should be drafted first, Ja Morant or Zion Williamson. And as big as Zion Williamson fan I was, I saw that twinkle in Ja Morant's eyes when he was in, I forget what college he was at, like Texas or something. And, when he was coming to the league, I'm like, oh, this guy going to be it. He got that special sauce. And you're like, no, Zion going to be way better. And in the first, I'd say 3 to 5 years right now, I would give the edge to Zion. But if you look at, out of all the best ball that's being played, man, Ja Morant is right there. He's got one or two best record in the West. He's leading the league, top 5 in scoring. Just all-star, caliber player. And he's been that way since the time he dribbled a basketball in the NBA. So right now, my choice would be Ja Morant. But again, there's about 5 people who would call me crazy, and clearly give it to Luka. Think about this, man. Luka just did something in basketball, right? That's never been done in the history of basketball. 60 points, more than 60 points, 20 plus rebounds, and more than 10 assists. Never been done. Not Elgin Baylor, not Oscar Robinson, not Will. Nobody's ever done this. So again, some people say it's Luka and it's not even close. Then there's my favorite player in the league.
Really?
My favorite player currently in the league right now because he's so just mellow and, he reminds me of me on the court. He'll shot fake you and you fall for it, but it's not a lot in it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, that Joker guy over there in Denver. This guy, how can you say somebody is playing better than Nikola Jokic right now? The things that he's doing, this man is 7 feet, but can take the ball out the rim of a made shot, push it all the way down the court, bag you up, no look pass to his teammate, hit the ball off the backboard, lay it up, 3 you, dunk if he, hadn't ate too much that day, with his 2-inch vertical. The guy can do it all. And then you wrap all that up and you say, all that's fine, but Jason Tatum is the best player on the best team in the NBA. So he should be it. So if I had a choice to be Ja Morant right now, just because I like him, but Joker, my favorite player, I tend to lean to him. You got the Greek Freak over there doing what he been doing for the past 5 years. You can give it to him every year, just about. LeBron ain't even on the top 10. Then you got Jason Tatum over there. You got people like Embiid, who if he can stay healthy, is in that conversation. Who's playing more consistent ball right now than Kevin Durant? This guy could probably be on the MVP list every year. Just a myriad, a cornucopia of good playing going on in the NBA right now. What say you?
It's just, my personal pick would be Luka, just because what you mentioned. Creating a stat line of 60, 21, and 10 is just
11.
I'm not sure exactly what the stats were, but it was around that parameter. And just knowing that as a guard, you can not only put that performance down, but do it consistently. Almost averages with 38 and 8 or whatever his averages are. And as amazing you could say Luka is, you can think of a 7-foot Luka Doncic and just look at Denver, and that's the type of player Nikola Jokic is.
Exactly.
So if I'm being unbiased, my pick would be Jokic or even Giannis, just because, you can give it to Giannis every year.
You start to underappreciate Giannis because he just do it now so consistently. And now he hitting free throws and mid-range shots and even three-pointers. So it's like you overlook how good he is because he's so good.
And with Jokic, you said something surprising, that you said that he was your favorite player. And it took me aback a bit, but I remembered the person that I thought was your favorite player in the league. He's not really on the court right now, but even with him coming back from injury and coming back soon, he was similar to you in a lot of ways. He was doubted. People told him he couldn't be anything in the league because he was too small. light-skinned guy by the name of Wardell Stephen Curry.
My normal favorite player, but he's not playing right now, so you know.
What do you think of him just as a player overall, and how did you become to like him as much as maybe even close to Kobe Bryant? I don't know how you would rank your all-time favorites, but what would you say about Steph Curry?
He probably third. You know, you got Isaiah and Kobe fighting for the number one spot in my eyes, in my mind, and Wardell being, you know, number two right up there in terms of favorite player. And mainly because I remember his first career games too, and when he came in the league, you know, he was just so small. You know, he was frail. A lot of people don't remember this. He was injury prone. He had ankle issues. And so he would play 5-6 games and you'd get a glimpse of how good he was. Then he'd be hurt for 5 or 6 games. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, you know, when he started to come into his own and hit shots, you know, and then following his career and seeing what he's doing, I'm like, man, he done. Just think about, again, we talked about Luka doing something that's never been done. Mm-hmm. I have seen the likes of Ray Allen, Larry Bird, Allen Houston, Craig Hodges, you know, B.J. Armstrong, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, you know, Terry Mills from the Pistons. Like, I've seen some of the greatest shooters that's ever going to be listed in this game. And Steph Curry is by far and away, Reggie Miller, you know, I'd be remiss not to mention number 31. But just so many, I mean, too many greats to even mention in terms of shooting the basketball. And it ain't even close. Steph Curry is by far and away, even in terms of stats, in terms of, you know, winning championships, even though his finals performance is a little bit to be desired. But MVPs, you know, all those shots that he's making, they're resulting in championships and MVPs and, you know, the admiration of his peers. It's just to do something and to be universally recognized as the greatest to do something in the long history of the NBA. I marvel at it every time. Steph, you know, no disrespect, my brother. Joker is my right now favorite player just because of what he's doing. But you know how we go, Steph.
And it's very funny, my own relationship with Steph Curry, because there's a hilarious story that to this day people bring up to me. You say that you got childhood stories that you've grown up to your age and even people still remember it. And I've been a LeBron James fan for a long time, but my original favorite player was Derrick Rose. Got to give a shout out to Derrick Rose. I wish I was one of them.
Well, you used to go to bat for Derrick Rose.
Still would. I know I have friend Donovan. Me and him would go to war for Derrick Rose.
Remember we wasn't seeing him play?
I do remember that. And just, it's sad that his career trajectory didn't go how we expected, but to this day, he's still getting over 200,000 All-Star votes. So it's
I don't know how you explain that, but
the fan base he done created.
He was the best player in the NBA at one point. A lot of people forget that.
Youngest MVP to ever do it, but after him, it was LeBron James, and it's been LeBron for a while. And seeing him having success in his career, there was a point that he met this short in NBA standards, light-skinned player by the name of Steph Curry. We just couldn't beat at first. And it was so aggravating to see that Steph would always get that win. And I didn't like him as a basketball player. And I haven't met him as a person, don't know him as a person, especially with me being young. Wasn't a fan of him. And Christmas came around one year and I had a LeBron James jersey. I had worn it. Got it for me before Christmas that time. But there was another present that my parents got. And they always write on the wrapping paper like this is a gift that we really liked or something like that. And I opened it up and it was a Steph Curry jersey. And I don't know if they remember my face, but I was looking like,
I do.
why would y'all give me something like this? Why would y'all give me a Steph Curry jersey? And throughout the time,
this was at the height of his popularity, by the way, like number one selling jersey in the NBA, I believe at the time. But
had to be around 2015, 2016, like you said, where he was making unanimous MVP, and I didn't want to wear it, but with going through, as time went on, the jersey collecting dust, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to throw it on, wear it to free dress or quote unquote free dress day for school, and I'm going to wear it. And the moment I stepped foot in that school building, people were looking at me like, what are you doing? You talk about LeBron, say you don't like Steph, and yeah, you turn around the next free dress, because ironically, previously I had worn the LeBron jersey for the, I think, $2 dress down. And now I show up in the Steph Curry jersey months later, and they're like, why would you say that you don't like him and you wear this jersey. And to this day, the story has been the exact same. It's been a Christmas gift. And to this day, nobody believes me when I say it was a Christmas gift. And
you know it's bad when you get ridiculed for wearing the best player in the NBA's jersey.
And even my dad...
We'll talk about y'all generation and some of the pitfalls, but that's one of them.
And I came to my dad and him and my mom saying, like, why can't you, what's wrong with liking multiple players in the league? And I'm saying, I don't even like the guy as a player. But to all these years later, and it's leading up to a question about his finals performance. You mentioned that some of the performances have been desired of, or some left more to be desired. And one of the biggest critiques, especially as a Curry hater and as a Warriors hater at the time, was he don't got finals MVP. He can't do it in the big moment. And yet, when he played the Boston Celtics, a very young team, just up and coming, they've had their gripes, they've had their things that they ain't like about the Warriors, moments that they were just this close, and it seemed like that the finals was there to win. And then they came back and win game one in a great comeback. And me as a Curry hater and as someone who's looking to see if he can do it, if the Warriors can do it, like, yeah, this is what we all been talking about. Boston about to win. And then games later, Warriors do it, win 4-2. Steph Curry is finally the finals MVP. And in seeing that growth in Steph, seeing the things he was doing on that court, it was some of the best basketball I've personally ever seen. And now, from that moment on, I'm like, I have to be a Steph Curry fan. The things he's doing, you can't deny that he's the greatest shooter of all time and one of the greatest players of all time. What would you say specifically about that finals moment? What did that show to you as a Curry fan who knew what he could do?
It's a very interesting question. And I remember pinpointing that because, again, I'm a realist, so I can like you but still not be such a sycophant that I don't want to point out your ineptitudes. You know what I mean? And so that was in the back of my mind, like, okay, like Andre Iguodala get MVP over you, bro. You know what I mean? And then you let, LeBron come back from 3-1. You know what I mean? To take the championship from you. You know what I mean? Then Kyrie Irving outshine you. So that was in the back of my mind, like, Steph, baby, it's now or never. Like, you got to put your imprint on these finals and win it for your team. He was the best player. Clay was still iffy. Draymond's a bit of a donkey. And so we needed Steph to go out and put his imprint on this finals. And that was something that I was watching. And I remember just looking, going, this team, the Boston Celtics, as good and as young as they were, right? The person that would start guarding Steph Curry, I specifically remember watching this. They would pick him up from the time he get the ball out the inbounds. Once he take about 3 steps, you got to guard him. Think about that. You got to guard this man 3 steps from the inbound because he will come up and jay you from about half court, and for 99% of the league, it'd be what you doing, you getting took out the game shot. One of them, no, yes, yes, he hit it. And so I was looking at that, and he just made those plays over and over again. He would hit a 3, from just ridiculous amount of space and court space to where you would go, you start to be surprised when he missed, no matter where he's at. He got in the gym range. That's what they call when you walk in the gym. That's his range. You know what I mean? And so for him to go ahead and get the Finals MVP and then add a little spice to it, like I think Steve Smith got credit for calling him Spicy Curry. You know what I mean? And then they would call him like Mean Curry and things like that. For him to add a little pizzazz to it and give the night sign when he hit the 3 and, celebrating. I'm like, oh, he unstoppable. This guy probably dunked 3 times in his career, but he is unstoppable as a player.
And just seeing his talent is phenomenal. And one of the debates that finals win sparked was him or Kevin Durant. And as a Curry hater back in the day, I would always say, like, it's easy, KD. Give me Kevin Durant. But growing older and getting some type of more knowledge about basketball and seeing Curry do that really on his own, he obviously had a supporting cast. It was revealed once Curry won that finals and got the finals MVP that KD didn't really do it by himself. You know, he wasn't able to get it done by himself, nor has Kyrie Irving with LeBron James. And when you look at the numbers, especially being somewhat of a numbers guy and looking at the eye test, seeing Curry do the things he did against Boston, I personally would say Steph Curry, looking back on it realistically, has probably always been better than Kevin Durant. Even with going as far as saying he was the best player on that Golden State team, where they would show moments Curry's getting triple teamed while KD's looking for the ball.
Sure.
So, and no disrespect to Kevin Durant at all, he's a phenomenal player. We were just saying he could be playing the most consistent ball right now. Would you, if you were to give your opinion, who would you say has been the better player all time wise between Curry and KD, and then healthy right now, who would be the better player?
You know what? It's a good question because I'm a KD fan. You know, I watched him over there in OKC. Also a big James Harden fan, by the way. I was early on James Harden.
That is true. I remember
very early that this guy is going to be very good. He kind of reminds me of what Jaylen Brown is right now. Like, he's the number 2 to Tatum over there. But if you put him on his own team, like, he's going to be a perennial all-star. And so I remember watching KD and then him evolving and, you know, Westbrook being on the team and they not being able to coexist because, you know, Westbrook needed the ball in his hand and just the evolution of KD. But when you put them on the same team, you hit the nail on the head on the point that you made. When KD was getting that ball, it was one-on-one. They and he was lighting them up. He was making them pay for it. But he didn't demand a double team. See, Steph Curry and them had won a ring before he even got there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So when Steph got the ball in those same moments, it was, we not finna lose to you hitting some insane three.
Mm-hmm.
We sending 3 people at you, you know what I mean? And then we gonna make you make a play. And then KD was just hurting him, you know, with his ability. And y'all, what you gonna do? You gonna guard Steph and leave me open? You gonna double me and leave Clay open in the corner? You know what I mean? So KD, I definitely believe, benefited from the greatness of Steph Curry. So I give the edge to Steph Curry just because of his stature. I mean, again, he was a smaller guy. It's like Isaiah Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I believe he was unstoppable. You can't say, matter of fact, if you got something bad to say about Isaiah Thomas, don't say it in front of me. You know what I mean? Because I used to watch this guy and the heart that he played with, and he was, you know, the littlest guy on the court, but when it was time to win, he was going to win. You know, I remember that game when he tore his Achilles. I was watching it, you know, and I seen him limp through the whole third quarter. But when they went down, I seen him score 16 straight on that torn Achilles. Hopping, limping, on one leg, hitting threes, falling out of bounds on one leg. You can't teach that. That's just doggedness, you know what I mean? And so Steph Curry being the smallest guy on the court and having to contend always with bigger guys, stronger guys, more physical guys, and still finding his way. Again, if I had one pick right now, maybe over Kobe Bryant.
Really?
If I had one pick right now, give me Steph. We starting the team with Steph.
That's still a bit shocking for you to say that. And you've mentioned that with favorite players, even though you said you might choose Steph if you had a pick, that Isaiah and Kobe fight for that one spot of favorite. And then you've mentioned off camera before that when you're actually playing, you're similar to Magic Johnson. And you said Magic Johnson is probably an underrated favorite player of yours. With that being said and mentioning these guards, is Steph Curry the greatest point guard of all time? And if you don't think so, what does he have to do in your eyes to be the greatest point guard of all time?
Well, that's a tough question because you got to be objective when you answer that question. And what's a point guard's primary role? It's to get his teammates involved.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got to get your own too. But again, that would be like me calling Allen Iverson, you know, one of the greatest point guards. I'm not sure if he ultimately was a 2-guard or 1-guard, but like one of the best players to ever play. But is he really, a phenomenal point guard?
Mm-hmm.
I think Steph is a great point guard. Best of all time, probably not even top 3. You know, you got Magic, who, you know, again at 6'9", coming in the league, pushing the ball down, no look pass. The inventor of Showtime Lakers, you know, the behind the back to the hoop, you know, kind of style. Like, I always thought that evolutionized the position of a point guard.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got people like, and I never liked this guy, man. But he should be in the top, 5 point guards. I never liked Steve Nash. I mean, you just couldn't tell me enough good things about Steve Nash. But he's one of those players, when you look back at his reign, with him and Amari Stoudemire and what's the funny shooting guy? Sean Marion. They, Leandro Barbosa, I think, was on that team at the time. And
great team.
Those guys are just running people, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Nash was at the helm of that. And so when you think about John Stockton, Steve Nash.
Can't give you Stockton, but no, it's a good argument. Good argument.
What? Anyway, Isaiah Thomas, even if you want to go back a little bit, to the Bob Cousy's and the, Havlicek steals the balls and all that. Like, it's hard to kind of put somebody in that best point guard of all time when you got so many greats. Mm-hmm. I don't think Steph is that. But again, doesn't take away from the great player he is. But again, I'm a bad boy, man. So I'm going Isaiah Thomas. Greatest point guard of all time.
Hey, definitely understandable. You heard it from his opinion first. I would personally have Magic as the greater point guard between him and Steph, but better player. I mean, you give me Steph. You can have Magic, and obviously he's 6'9" point guard, but the greatest shooter of all time, and Steph's not a bad passer by any means. So
handles, can pass, starting to play defense now. Ain't much you can say about Steph.
Yeah, better basketball player, I would say Steph, but greater point guard. I mean, Magic Johnson, he was literally Magic Johnson, greatest passer of all time. Showtime Lakers. There's not much you could say. Youngest Finals MVP or got it in his rookie year.
Started at center as a point guard.
It's only so much you can say about that.
Listen, here's one of them stats about Magic that you just can't deny, right?
Mm-hmm.
First year high school won a championship. First year Michigan State won a championship. First year in the NBA won a championship. You know what I mean? Like, that there's no denying the greatness that he brought to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, again, growing up a young Pistons fan and remembering when they drafted Isaiah and just the diminutive stature that he had, but yet patting that ball. I remember I used to go down the basement and train on how to dribble, and I would cut the lights off in complete darkness and just dribble with my left hand, right hand, not being able to see what's in front of you, and I heard that Isaiah did that one time, so again, hey, for me, how y'all say it, it's the bad boys for me. Yeah, I mean.
Hey, definitely understandable. And you mentioned that you weren't really the biggest Steve Nash fan. Was that because he got them MVPs over Kobe, or does that not have anything to do with it? Both times,
undeserved.
No, he deserved it.
You know what I mean? As good as he was, I used to see Nash. He was good, but he got an MVP the year that Kobe Bryant scored 81 points.
He did.
And carried his team to the playoffs. Like, I just don't. Steve Nash, brother, I hope I don't never see you in person. Because, we're going to leave that one there.
Hey, at the end of the day, 2-time MVP Steve Nash. But
that's insane.
Can't take it away.
More MVPs than the late, great Mamba.
Can't take it away from him. And to end off our NBA conversation before we segue into some other things, to put you on blast just to see if it stayed the same, what would you say is your top 5, or if top 3, if 5's too much, greatest players of all time, and why would you rank them that way?
Just all-time greatest players?
Correct.
Again, this is where you have to separate bias from just realization. You know what I mean? Obviously, the number one spot just get taken off the table. You know what I mean?
For
any real person who don't have Jordan, as the greatest player of all time, probably got some kind of bias in there.
Okay.
Again, 6 championships, right?
Undefeated.
Never lost. You can't say that about Tom Brady, which we're going to get into in a minute, because Tom Brady is a recent conversation of controversy. But you can't say that about the great Tom Brady. You can't say it about Wilt. You can't say it about Bird. LeBron, Kobe. Nobody has ever played in 6 championships and won every single one of them. And was the best player on every team that they won the championship. And so, greatest, again, if you got a top 3 without Michael Jordan there, then you're not credible as whatever you are. Right? So I'm going Mike number 1. Here's where the controversy comes in.
Right at the second spot.
Kobe Bryant, Kobe
Okay.
Bean. You know, it's like I don't look at him. I don't look at Kobe Bryant as a basketball player. He's like my brother.
Really?
Yeah. So he like a family member.
So it's like you got to
what
put
I
him
mean?
there too.
So yeah, it ain't even basketball. It's bigger than basketball. You know what I mean? I'm gonna put my brother at number 2. You know, just because that's my guy.
Understandable.
And again, I'm gonna go to this point: is that any reasonably minded basketball person who look at LeBron James and don't put him in that, echelon, the upper echelon of basketball players, you probably holding some kind of bias.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? So I'm going to throw him at number 3 if we go on top 3. And those are all guards. And again, how do you leave out somebody like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? You know what I mean? So if we go on top 5, Jabbar is right there at 4 for me personally. And then, 5 is another hard one. Like, you got the Tim Duncans of the world who probably still underappreciated.
One shot away from being perfect.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a lot of people I can put at that 5 spot. I'll go Tim Duncan just because, the guy got, 5 championships.
Correct.
Almost never lost. Made the playoffs every year of his career and won a championship every other year or some stuff like some weird stat like that, you know what I mean? But give me those 5 and you can name anybody on earth who you want and I'll take those 5.
Those 5 are almost, again, I'll put emphasis on almost the exact players and order that I would put that in. I've had an episode about this as well. I've talked about it. Had Jordan at 1, agreed that he's Jordan.
It's just, I don't even like him. I still don't like him that much, but, it's just, can't deny it.
One of the most surprising stats about Jordan, and it's really not surprising once you think about it, but even with LeBron about to pass Kareem, you can make an argument that he's the greatest scorer. You can make an argument for Kevin Durant, KD, Kobe. Jordan has 10 scoring titles, and we can fact check that after this, or anyone else can fact check that. He not only, if I'm not mistaken, he had 10 scoring titles. He averaged 30 for his career.
He averaged 30 for the entirety of his career.
It's mind-boggling. And then 2, where's the controversy and where to disagree at? I have LeBron James, and we already say you can make the argument he's the GOAT. It's a lot that he did do, but for me personally, the thing that's gonna probably forever have LeBron at 2 for me is more so his finals record, and more so 2011. We could laugh about it.
JT, baby.
I can shake my head about it. No, I can't excuse Jason Terry lighting you up in the final series.
Jason Terry went to work.
But LeBron at 2 and then Kobe at 3, and there's been people to even say that even having Kobe as top 3 is controversial with the mishaps he did have in his career. One of the greatest things that he ever accomplished was averaging 35 in 1 year, and I think it was the same year he put up 81, but he almost didn't make the playoffs. He was 6th seed around that, and there have been moments where shot his team out the game. His efficiency isn't the best. No, I think it was throughout his career, but
don't get a whoop.
And then, you got haters who would just say Shaq got him his first 3 rings, which even though I would even disagree with, if you were to say that if you could ask yourself, would Shaq get those more rings without Kobe, or Kobe get more without Shaq? We saw Kobe get 2, we saw Shaq get 1, so that argument could be there, but Kobe would be my 3rd spot, and then 4th would also be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. 6 rings, gonna eventually probably have the 2nd most points of all time as a center, unstoppable skyhook.
A record, by the way, that's hell. Kareem hadn't played basketball in 30, 40 years, and he's still been number 1 in a lot of categories, including scoring.
And with for me, the 5th spot, similar to what you said, 5th spot is the hardest for me. You could go Tim Duncan. If I'm biased, I would personally go Shaq as my favorite center of all time, just with the things that Shaq have done. And the fact that Shaq underachieved. That would be my main argument for Shaq, is that he underachieved as a player, and even he would say it with not caring too much about his health or weight or free throws. But you could throw names out there like Shaq, Tim Duncan. Me personally, if you can tell by how I rank my players, I prefer the more smaller, the guards or forwards. So I could throw Bird at 5th, Magic at 5th. So
I think we left Bird out the conversation, but we're talking about top 5 of all time.
And I personally go back and forth between Magic and Bird. Ask me one day, I say Bird. Ask me one day, I say Magic. Show me a stat, I probably say Bird. Show me another stat, I say Magic. To give an answer for the 5th spot, just to be safe, I may just go Tim Duncan just to be safe, or maybe even whoever you ask me one day who's better between Magic or Bird to give that answer. But fifth, we'll go Tim Duncan for right now. But there's a lot of talent, old and young, that maybe could shake up this list. You mean Giannis could probably be up somewhere in the top 5, 10 at the end of his career.
Where you gonna put Steph at the end of his career?
Steph is another one I would consider. If I was someone who considers Steph over Magic, then Steph would have took my 5th spot. But as I said in my podcast episode, I talked about that. I can't put Steph over Magic right now, but that would be another name. KD would be another.
Yeah, where you gonna put KD at the end of his career?
Personally, not top 10 for me, but we don't gotta turn this to a KD bash.
Another guy that I don't like who literally for 2 to 3 years averaged a triple double. Russell Westbrook. You know what I mean? Like even if you don't, he don't make the greatest player of all time list, but point guards. Guards in general, we marveled over. We didn't even know who Oscar Robertson was. Half of us couldn't point Oscar Robertson out of the lineup. But we universally accepted him as being, one of the greatest players of all time because he's the only one who averaged a triple-double. And then Russell Westbrook come and do it 2 or 3 times.
And Westbrook, especially during that year, I think 2017 was the year he got MVP, average triple-double. I could be wrong. But especially during that year, as a Curry hater back in the day, it was, Westbrook, best point guard, and Kyrie, too. And then Steph at third. It was the year after 2016. But even with Westbrook, especially him being on the Lakers and having his struggles at first, but seeing the transition of him playing on the bench and being a better player and just thinking about the fact that he can put a triple-double on you every night or put up a triple-double every night if you wanted to. You could you can make an argument for Westbrook being 3rd greatest point guard behind Steph or Magic, or 4th if you got Isaiah in there. So Westbrook's definitely, you could probably say first ballot Hall of Famer, guaranteed maybe.
100%.
So
100%. He could use a ring.
He definitely could.
But and then you think about the honorable mentions, the people who never gonna make the list, right? So you got Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
Paul Pierce. Carmelo Anthony. Vince Carter.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Tracy McGrady.
Yeah.
Yao Ming. These are guys that's never going to make anybody's top list, but
they're very great
Dwayne
players.
Wade, come on. This guy he probably got Shaq a ring. He probably got LeBron a ring. you know what I mean? That shouldn't be understated. You know what I mean? Paul Pierce, again, I'm no big Boston fan, but you can't deny some of his takeover years. You know what I mean?
I don't know about takeover, but he was really good.
He was pretty good.
Yeah.
Your favorite guy early on. Derrick Rose is never going to make nobody's top list, but I remember watching him, and he was legitimately the best player when you had people already in the league, like LeBron James, Steph Curry.
Kobe.
Kobe.
Hey, just to remind you, he was there. Kobe was also there.
He was there. And so, again, those guys are never going to make the list, but, we got to be, objectively unbiased about this list, and there's some great players that came across this league that's never going to make the list.
And with how much I used to like and still like Derrick Rose as a player, you mentioned John Morant. I see the similarities between those two, and it scares me how similar they are because we see the trajectory of Derrick Rose's career in his body.
I hope he don't outjump himself out of a career, because the man is, you're right. The similarities are striking.
And just seeing the impact Derrick Rose had, even to this day, the fact that he can still get top 10 All-Star votes for guards in the East.
It just shows you how good he was, when he was best player in the league.
And he's still playing with the injuries he's had. It's crazy.